Hey friends, welcome to the Visual Studio Subscriptions Hub and our show, Under Control, just for administrators. I am Xavier, and today I'm going to be showing you how to assign and manage Visual Studio subscriptions. Feel free to drop us a note down there in the comments and tell us what you would like to see in a future episode. Now, let's dive in. Here's my welcome email. As super admin on my team, Olivia has given me access as a super admin. I'll begin by clicking on the Assign and Manage Subscriptions button, which takes me to the admin portal. As a side note, every time that you want to come back to the portal, you do not need to go back to the email. There are a few ways to get here. The first one is by typing manage.visualstudio.com. However, there's a tiny detail. Every time that you do this, you're going to need to re-authenticate. There's a workaround. If you just go and type manage.visualstudio.com/subscribers, there's no need to re-authenticate. The URL will not need to sign in again. If this is the first time in the admin portal, all of this will be new to you. However, you will see in no time that managing subscriptions is quite intuitive and you will be on your own in no time. Just to set expectations, this agreement is an enterprise agreement, and I am a super admin. Both the type of agreement and your role can have an effect on what you see. If your screen looks like this, it means that you still need to be added to an agreement by a super admin, or you're signing in with a different sign-in email than the one that was provided in your welcome email. Just for a quick lay of the land, I'll point out that here I am in the Manage Subscribers tab. You also have a Manage Administrators. There you go. You only see this if you're a super admin. You got the Get Help, which I'll cover in just a few moments. And on the left, you have the left rail, where you can see the overview, the agreement details, usage statistics, and the agreement preferences, which is pretty important. I'll come back to this in just a moment. Let me just go back to the Manage Subscribers tab. Let me ask you a question. What's the most important task in the portal? There are several important points, but highly likely it is assigning subscriptions to my developers. After all, that's how they work. At this point, other admins in our organization have also added subscriptions to several developers. Our org is under an enterprise agreement. This, along with agreements that can over-allocate, are sometimes referred to as trusted agreements. This will come in handy in a minute, but I just wanted to mention that I don't need to worry about running out of subscriptions. Now, to check how many subscriptions I have assigned, I can check here on the left rail on the overview. As you can see, I have multiple different subscription levels. Visual Studio Enterprise has 1 subscription out of 10. Visual Studio Enterprise with GitHub Enterprise has 8 out of 10. And then right down below, you can see Visual Studio Test Professional. That is in a different color because it has over-allocated subscriptions. I'll come back to those in just a few moments. Again, with our enterprise agreement, I'm able to over-allocate, so I don't need to worry when I have more subscriptions assigned than what I have available, like in this case. And now, let me show you how to add an individual subscriber. First, I'm going to add my contractor. He's not in our company domain, so I think it will be better to add him individually. So I'll select Add an Individual Subscriber. I know he's not in my Azure Active Directory, so I don't need to search. I'll just add his details in here. Juan Morgan. We're only required to complete the fields with the red asterisk. I know he usually uses his Hotmail address for user IDs and logins, but really only checks his Tailwind Traders email, so I'm going to add his juan@hotmail.com for his sign-in address, but I'll add his juan@tailwindtraders.com for his notification email address. Again, the notification email is optional, but if a subscriber doesn't check mail sent to their sign-in email, then a notification email is helpful. Let's see. Regarding the subscription level, I'll assign Visual Studio Enterprise. In this case, I'm not going to allow for software downloads and product keys. He's from the US and he speaks English. As for the reference, this is a great spot if you want to keep notes about a specific subscription or individual. As an example, a cost center or department for that subscriber. I'll add a note in here just as a reminder or for anyone else to know who he is or why he's here. Xavier's contractor. but the assignment was not successful. The first time that this happened to me, I did not know what happened. But then I scrolled up and saw this. I thought it was an error message. We were unable to locate the subscriber in the current tenant directory for your work email. If this was intentional, please ignore and continue. I don't want the same thing to happen to you. Please know that this is not an error. It is simply a call out to make sure I'm adding the details as I intended to, since this subscriber is not in our directory. Since this is what I intended, it is totally fine. In other cases, you may get messages, for example, like this one. The sign-in email address must be email enabled so the subscriber can accept their GitHub invitation. If they cannot receive emails, they will not be able to use GitHub Enterprise. Well, this is very, very important. Whenever you add someone with a GitHub Enterprise subscription, their email needs to receive notifications so that they can sign in. Another important side note, after you assign a subscription that includes GitHub Enterprise, a GitHub admin must invite the subscriber to a GitHub org. It doesn't get sent automatically. The GitHub admin might be you, might be me, or might be someone else. But that is a different video. So now I'm going to click on confirm. And just like that, let me just confirm. Great. So now I've added Juan. Immediately, he receives an email in his Tailwind Traders account giving him his welcome and access instructions. Now, let's move on into the next feature that will be really useful. Adding subscribers individually works well. However, I have a decent-sized team working for me on a few projects that are just ramping up, so I want to add subscribers in bulk. Given that I have an enterprise agreement, I can use the Azure Active Directory Groups feature. However, and this is very important, only enterprise agreements have this feature and let me over-allocate, which is quite convenient. In my case, I already created a team in Azure AD. So let me just remove this filter over here and click on Add. This is the second functionality that I want to show you, Azure Active Directory Group. The first thing that I need to do is I need to look for the group that I want to create. But just bear in mind that this group needs to exist already in Azure Active Directory, which is something that you do in the Azure portal. Here's my group, VSSP. There it is. Now I can see the members. And this is kind of important because I want to see who is that I am adding a subscription to. And there's one person that's missing over there. I need to add this person, and I have to do that in the portal. Okay, now let's move forward. The subscription level, I'm going to be assigning Visual Studio Enterprise. In this case, that's totally fine. Now, for software download and product keys, in this case, I'm going to leave to do not allow. So here's why. We host the Visual Studio IDE internally. These users or subscribers need to be properly licensed to use the software, hence the assignment, so that we can keep that toggle off. Also, I don't need any reference details here because I'll remember from the name of the group which team this is. So now I'm going to click on Add, and there it is. Your Azure Active Directory group VSSP has been successfully added. If I need to make any changes to their contact or sign-in details, I'll need to go onto Azure Active Directory in the future to make changes. And now let's move on to the third way of adding users. At this point, I showed you how to add subscribers individually and using an Azure AD group. The third way is to add subscribers using the bulk add template. This is useful when you have an agreement type other than enterprise, because remember, enterprise agreements are the only ones that can add using the Azure AD groups. To start, I'll go to Add and select Bulk Add. Then I get this prompt to download the Excel template. It's best to download this fresh each time you do a bulk upload, just in case the template itself has been updated. So once I download, I open it here, and this is the bulk add template. If you want to reference it, the first tab has the instructions, but also it's pretty intuitive. So I'll enable editing and I'll start adding the details for my next subscriber. Her name is Jillian. Her sign-in email is jillian@contoso.com. She is from the United States. She speaks English. Subscription level I'll talk about in just a second, But for now, I'm going to also set the download product keys to false. I'm not going to add a reference right now, and she doesn't need a separate notification email. Let's talk about the subscription GUID, or GUID, as we typically say. The GUID is a unique ID that points to a specific subscription. Each has its own. If the GUID is left blank in the upload template, the next available subscription will be assigned when the template is uploaded into the portal. But let's say I had a contractor that was with us temporarily and she left. Then I want to onboard someone new. In this case, Jillian. I want to transfer the used subscription to this Jillian so she's properly licensed for Visual Studio. But she doesn't need fresh subscription benefits. This is why it would be a good idea to reuse or reassign the previously used GUID. If Jillian needed fresh benefits, I would leave it blank so a fresh GUID would be assigned. So I'll use the export here because it lists the GUIDs and I can see which ones are available. So in this exported spreadsheet, I'm going to look for Zoe's GUID. This is the one that I need to copy. Now I'm going to double check which subscription level this GUID is for. Visual Studio Enterprise with GitHub Enterprise. So now I will go back over here to bulk add Excel and enter that GUID. Now we know because we checked that it was Visual Studio Enterprise with GitHub Enterprise. Okay, so we enter that here to match and we're good to go. Also, you'll notice there's this column at the end, the error message, which helps you with some validation like this. Now I'm going to save this spreadsheet. I'm going to close it, save, and now within the portal, the only thing that I need to do is I'm going to go back to add, bulk add, and then I can either browse or just drag and drop the new file I saved with Jillian's information here. Since this is the add function and not edit, I'll get a conflict until I've removed Zoe from her subscription, which she's still using until the end of the week. So at this point, I'm not going to upload this until after I remove Zoe's subscription. Okay, so things are looking pretty good here. I think I've got all of my subscriber assignments done for now. But let me show you a little bit more of what we can do with the Manage Subscribers tab. For example, here's how I sort by name. Also, I can filter, for example, by subscription level. If I only want to see Visual Studio Enterprise subscriptions, this is the way to do it. Works in the same way for subscription type, download and product keys, language, and others. Additionally, I can click on Edit Columns to remove or add columns, like this. If I want to re-add the columns, I just need to go in and click on Add a Column. At this point, it is worth mentioning that any changes that I make to the layout are only reflected in my account. This is not something that modifies other admins' views. Anyway, while we're here up in this area, we've got this Connect Emails function. This is pretty nice. If you remember when I added Juan, my contractor, I used his Hotmail account for his sign-in. And you'll see here that the portal has recognized there's a user with the same name in our Azure AD. The same thing for Abigail Jackson. She was added with a Hotmail account, and there's a Contoso account. So now here's what I need to do. I'm going to connect her emails. There's her current identity with her match identity. I'm going to click on Continue. Quick note, I'm going to connect Abigail's emails because she is a full-time employee, and by company policy, she needs to use her Contoso account. Regarding Juan, he is a contractor, and at the moment, he's going to keep using his personal account, and this is fine. Ultimately, your company policies are up to you, but this is how it works at Contoso. And just like that, when I click Save, there you go. Your subscriber emails have been connected. Now, if I look for Abigail, I can see that she's now using her Contoso email address. One thing to remember, if the invitation to GitHub was already sent to Abigail at her Hotmail email address, that is her sign-in for GitHub and will not be changed, even though her sign-in for her Visual Studio subscription has changed to her Contoso address. Now, let's move over into over-allocations. One notice that did not pop up when I was adding my subscribers, but you may see when adding yours, would say something like this. By proceeding, your Visual Studio subscription will be over-allocated by. This is common and doesn't prevent you from adding those subscribers. Remember, some agreements have the ability to over-allocate. So let me show you for a second. If I go over here in the overview, I can see which of my agreements are over-allocated. In this case, I have one that's over-allocated, the Visual Studio Test Professional. This I can do because my agreement allows me to. But if your agreement does not have the ability to over-allocate, you would instead receive a notice saying, no unassigned Visual Studio Test Professional subscription is available. So if you can't over-allocate, the portal won't let you. Now, if you do over-allocate, this will be resolved during your organization's true-up period. This isn't necessarily something that you would deal with as an admin, but instead falls on the primary contact for the overall agreement. Remember when I said that Olivia added me as a super admin? I am not the primary contact for our organization's agreement, so I didn't receive access by default when our agreement was created. Olivia, that's my boss, is the primary contact for our organization's agreement. She won't necessarily want to be coming into the admin portal to manage our Visual Studio subscribers, so that's why she made me an admin. I directly oversee the teams, so it's easier for me to know who should have a subscription. She has bigger fish to fry, so she puts that on me. But one thing is that our organization will need to pay for the over-allocated subscriptions at our organization's true-up period. Let me show you one way I can help keep this in check so that we don't end up paying for subscriptions we don't need. There are two places where I can check: the overview on the left rail and also the dashboard. We can see that we have over-allocated by 2 in Visual Studio Test Professional on the left side in the overview. However, if I hover over, I can read this message. Your agreement is over-allocated with 2 Visual Studio Test Professional subscriptions. Additionally, I can also select the subscription level over here to see how this happened. Over here, I can see that I have a maximum usage value of 3, which was just recorded a few days ago. Now, if you say, hey Xavier, this sounds stressful, don't worry, my friend, because I want to show you something. Let me just go back to my email. Over here, I'm going to look for the statement. This is the one, the Visual Studio Subscriptions Monthly Admin Statement for this month. Okay, as an admin, you will receive a monthly admin statement that will show you an overview of the subscription levels in your agreement, how many your organization has purchased, and how many are assigned. This is a great way to monitor any over-allocated subscriptions. Additionally, I can go over here and select the agreement preferences. Here is where I set the preferences for when I want to be notified when our agreement is over-allocated and by how much. Maybe you know that your organization typically over-allocates by up to 100 subscriptions, like this. And you don't want to receive notifications before that point, but you just want to know if you go over. Just select the 100 plus over here to receive notifications when your agreement gets over-allocated by more than 100, and that will send at any point that occurs. This is in addition to your monthly admin statement. That will come always, no matter what. One way you can proactively avoid over-allocation to begin with is by reassigning available subscriptions to subscribers with over-allocated subscription levels. Make sure to switch subscription levels for an existing subscriber prior to assigning more of a level near purchase maximum to avoid increasing maximum usage. While we're here, there are a few other callouts. First, if you don't see this gear icon, that's probably because it's only available for super admins, and that means you're a regular admin. There are a few extra features you'll see as a super admin. This panel here is one, the agreement preferences. The other feature is this panel right here to manage administrators. Okay, so back to the agreement preferences panel. This is a nice way to either help out your fellow admins or just try to make things as foolproof as possible. Let's take a look at each one. The first one is this one, the contact email address. This email doesn't get displayed, but in the portal, subscribers have an option to contact their admin and send the message straight from the portal. For us here, we've got this going to a group distro because I know I don't want to be the only one getting messages from subscribers. If it's something urgent they need help with, I'd rather have the message go to all of us admins so our dev can get the help they need and get back to work. We use the email devteamadmins@contoso.com. This is also where the over-allocation notification will be get sent to. Now, next up, the default subscription level. This and the next couple of items will populate by default when other admins are adding subscribers. Remember when I added Juan, I entered his name and his email, but also had to select all of the subscription levels. All of our contractors at Contoso will usually get Visual Studio Enterprise access, so I'm going to set that as a default here. Let me close. Okay, that's perfect. That's just one less click our other admins will have to do now, unless they want to change it for the individual they're adding. That's of course, right? These settings don't prevent admins from making changes. It just helps to start as a default rather than being blank. Okay, the default communication preferences. This one's right here. Right now, they're set to United States and English. So I'll set that as a preference because the majority of my team are located in the US and they speak English. But again, it can be changed when adding subscribers. Now remember when I added Juan with his Hotmail address and I got a warning? That's the message admins will get when the default external settings subscriber is enabled. Right now it's enabled. I can disable it as well. Let me leave it as enabled. This allows external subscribers, but will at least give you a heads up to make sure it's what you're intending to do. When this setting is toggled off, that's disabled, admins will be blocked from assigning subscriptions to users outside of their Azure AD tenant, and they will receive messages like this. This seems to be a personal email address. Your super admin has disabled adding subscribers outside of your tenant directory. If this was intentional, please contact your super admin to update this setting. And here's something that's very important. This is one setting that cannot be overwritten by admins. So if they do need to add someone external, they'll have to reach out to a super admin to make that change here in the agreement preferences. Next, we've got the default download and product key setting. This one is pretty straightforward. Do you want subscribers by default to have access to downloads and product keys or not? For the type of dev work that we do here, the majority of our users won't need access to the software library, so we keep this setting disabled. But again, if there's a dev that does need to download software and keys, the admin adding them can always switch this for the individual that they're adding. Okay, so back to other things you might want to know about editing subscribers. For this, I'll close the agreement preferences and go to the Manage Subscribers tab. Say you've already assigned a subscription and you want to change the level for a particular subscriber. First, you should know that subscribers will need to uninstall the Visual Studio IDE and re-download and install the new level, be it Enterprise or Professional. This, in particular, is one detail that's very easily overlooked because the subscribers do not receive any notification that their IDE is no longer licensed. It basically switches to trial mode and it will eventually prompt for a key. Also, remember that being a Visual Studio subscriber not only gives you access to all the great benefits, maybe downloads and product keys if you enable that, it also licenses them for the use of the IDE for as long as they're a subscriber. Okay, so all that considered, if you still want to change the subscription level for one of your subscribers, it's pretty straightforward, and of course, there are a few ways in we can edit. In this case, I'm going to look for Juan Morgan, like this. And from the three dots, the actions, I'm going to select an edit, which brings the edit subscriber details. In here, I can switch the subscription level. I'm going to switch it to Visual Studio Enterprise, and I'm going to click on Save. Again, given that I'm using a personal email address, I get a notification at the top, but this is fine. So I click on Save. Okay, so in this case that I've changed the subscription level, what's going to happen is that Juan is going to get two emails. One letting him know that the original access for the subscription has been removed, and the other new welcome email for the new subscription level. What's really helpful is that the email tells Juan that their subscription was removed and that it has a link to the documentation that will tell him what this means for all of his benefits that may have already started using the old subscription. Also, it's important to note that if they're using the monthly Azure credits that come with their subscription, they'll want to also switch any assets from their old Azure subscription into the new one. The old one will still be available for 30 days, but after that, their assets will be lost. Okay, let's see, what other edits do I might need to make? Oh, I know this is one that we've all likely dealt with at one time or another. Say your organization has a domain change and you need to edit everyone's email addresses. That could be really hard if you do it one by one, unless I can do it in an easy way, like this. Let me just click on bulk edit, and in here, in the edit multiple subscribers, I'm going to click on export this Excel. Now I'm going to open this file. I'm going to enable editing and go to the second tab, the edit multiple subscribers. Here, I'm going to modify all of the Contoso email addresses like this, contoso.com, and I'm going to replace it with tailwindtraders.com. I'll click on replace all. There you go. And now I am going to save. I'm going to come back over here. Now, if I browse, I can select, re-upload, and now when I click OK, all of the email addresses from all of my subscribers will be switched from contoso.com to tailwindtraders.com. However, I am not going to do this right now. This is scheduled for a more convenient non-working hours time. Another way in we can make changes in bulk is by selecting these check bubbles over here. I can select one, I can select all, I can multi-select, or even I can select ranges by holding down the Shift key. If I want to, I can click on delete, and I have the ability to delete multiple subscribers. Of course, this is not what I intend to do right now because they're hard at work. So let me just cancel out. I think the only other item we haven't talked about up here is the resend email feature. This is very helpful because there's always someone who has trouble locating their welcome email, right? But this is a very easy fix. I'll just select the people that I want to resend the email to. I'll click on resend and confirm. And just like that, the welcome email has been sent successfully. Now I can follow up straight away with that subscriber or subscribers to make sure they found the welcome email and can access their benefits. Because really, that's the reason we're here. Our organizations have purchased these agreements so our dev teams can use all of these great benefits. All right, I've covered managing subscribers. Now, if you're a super admin, you'll also have this tab, the Manage Administrators. You'll see it looks a lot like the Manage Subscribers tab, so I'll focus on the differences. First, this drop down right here. This one is something that gets me every time. Whenever we switch tabs, the PCN and agreement drop-down values are reset to their defaults, not only the PCN and agreement that you had selected previously. If you have more than one PCN and agreement, always make sure you have selected the right one. Okay, so lay of the land, things that will look different here. Instead of subscription levels, we have agreements that the admins are assigned to manage. Also, we got this check marks right here, which indicates if someone is a super admin. Those green ones indicate that this person is a super administrator. Also, these icons over here will show, this one's right here, will show if someone is a super admin. They've got that little badge on top of the person icon if they're a super admin. No badge, it's a regular admin. And there's also this warning looking triangle which tells me that an administrator is using a sign-in email that is not part of an organization's Azure AD tenant. It's not an issue. I know it looks like something that needs fixing, but if that's the way it was intended, it's okay to leave as is. All right, so those are basically all the differences. Now, let's see what it looks like to add an administrator. So just like subscribers, I click on Add, which is used to add one admin. I can either search our Azure AD for someone. In this case, I'll add Kai Carter and just look for him. There you go. And all of their info pops in there. I'll check the box to make them a super admin. There you go. As a reminder, the differences between an admin and a super admin are not so many, but they can be significant. An admin can assign subscriptions. A super admin can assign subscriptions, assign new or additional admins and super admins to agreements, and set default agreement preferences, the ones on the gear icon that only shows for super admins. Okay, so yes, I want to make Kai a super admin. I've checked the box, and now I will click on Add down here, and there you go. Our admin has been added. Kai will get the same notification email that I showed you at the beginning of our video that I received when Olivia added me as a super admin. Also, I can click these three dots to edit an admin, just like in the subscriber tab. But the only thing I can manage is that checkbox to toggle between an admin and a super admin. If I want to change their email address or anything else, I'll need to delete their admin user and re-add them. Let me show you. Just like this. I'll click on Add, and the sign-in email address is Kai at tailwindtraders.com. Called Kai Carter. Going to be a super admin. I click on Add. Now, I'm being told that this user is not located in the current tenant or directory. I know this is fine, so I click on Add. At this point, I have two Kai Carters, so now I can delete the old one. Let me just click on Delete and confirm. And that is how you change the email for an admin or super admin. Now, when I talk about deleting admins, it's important that you always keep at least a minimum of 2 super admins on any given agreement. In the case that there was only one super admin and that admin leaves or is unavailable, you don't want to leave your agreement without a super admin. If there's not a super admin on your agreement, you'll need to reach out to support to properly authenticate and have them assist with you getting added as a super admin. Okay, let's wrap this up. I want to leave you with some resources should any other questions come up. For this, let's jump over here to the Get Help tab. There's a list of videos. These are great if you have a quick question or need a reminder of how to do something. Also, there's a section down here with the frequently asked questions. These are great. Additionally, there's a whole bunch of helpful links at the bottom, be it admin, subscriber, or volume licensing documentation. But, and this is important, bookmark this URL, aka.ms/admin handbook, which has a lot of useful information that you might want to read. Also, if you're still in need, click on this link, which is going to take you to the support cases. Here, you will find a solution that's already available for your issue, or you can also open a case and get contacted by support. And that's it for today. I am here to help you. This is our hub, and you're welcome here anytime. Drop us a note in the comments. We'd love to address any questions or hear about something you'd like to see in a future episode. I am Xavier, and I'm helping you keep things under control.